Good evening, welcome to another edition of the Gersnet Podcast, the independent Rangers podcast by fans or for fans, where all the content is absolutely free. Coming to you in association with Forrest Precision Engineering. I'm your host tonight, Brian Archer, and as always, we'd encourage you to get onto the Gersnet website and check out our forums for all your latest Rangers news and discussion. We're live tonight on the YouTube channel, and we'd ask that you continue to share the pod on social media, spread the word, and please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Before I introduce my guests for tonight, I may give another mention to our partners over at Forrest Precision Engineering. They're a Glasgow-based engineering company who have been a big commercial supporter of Rangers for a number of years, and we're delighted to have them supporting the pod. If you want more information about them, please visit their website at www.forestprecisioneng.com. They also have a stunning executive lounge in the Ibrox main stand, and for more information on that, email the club at hospitality@rangers.co.uk. Now to bring in my two guests. Firstly, Rob Fawcett. Rob, I think this is our first time on our show. How are you doing?
It is. Nice to see you, Brian. I'm good, thank you. It's been a decent weekend. We're through to the next round, and a certain result today has probably made us get a wee bit more of a spring in our step. So it's been good.
That was definitely a nice pick me up on a Sunday afternoon. Also joining us, we've got Stewart Weir. Stewart, how's things?
Yeah, I'm doing very well, Brian. Thank you for asking. I think this afternoon, trying to watch about 5 games at the same time probably taxed me a bit too much. But obviously, there were certain results that will be more of a connect with Rangers supporters, especially the one at Rugby Park. So I think all in all, I think a great many will be satisfied with the outcome from Kilmarnock's victory.
Yeah, I think so. We're obviously here to discuss Rangers 2-1 victory over Morton yesterday at Ibrox at the League Cup. That puts us into the next round of the League Cup, which not all football fans in Glasgow can say tonight. The first thing, Rob, I wanted to discuss, and I'll come to you first, was just on the team selection yesterday. You made a number of changes, kind of brought in a few players, gave minutes to a few players that hadn't been starting or playing much. There was a few new faces. Was there any surprise additions that came in, or is there anybody that was excluded you would have liked to have seen start?
So I think the first thing was just the amount of changes that you made was probably a bit of a surprise. I think for me, new players coming into the squad, you want to try and give them game time so that they can build those relationships up. So it was good to see Dessers, Lammers starting. I was hoping that Danilo might have started up there as well, just so that those three could get used to each other. I think the big one for me was left back. I think the last update I saw in Yilmaz was that Beale was hoping he was going to be available for selection before the Morton game. So I'm assuming he must still be injured. But seeing Yefeko coming in at left back there, and then it was obviously good to see Sterling coming in at right back as well to give us really a first glimpse as to what he was going to be like. And I think the only other glaring one that maybe a lot of people have expected was the fact that Butland started instead of McCrory coming in. I think if we've got any hope of enticing him to stay and further his career at Rangers, then giving him the cup games probably would have been a good option from that point of view.
Yeah, sure. Ross mentioned there he was kind of surprised by the number of changes. Were you similar? Would you have preferred to have seen us maybe go with more of a first 11 to build up that continuity, or were you kind of expecting that number of changes?
I was utterly shocked, to be honest. I discussed this with Alec on Friday night about how Rangers might have played it, and I expected a change or two, but as Robert said there, I just didn't see the number of changes sort of coming. I think at this point the season, these guys are still trying to find their feet as Rangers players, and the team's still trying to find its feet as a unit. So therefore, I thought that he would go with the kind of tried and tested, and the guys that might actually be seen to be, if you like, the first picks or the sort of starting 11, and give them a bit more time together and therefore build a bit more confidence. So I was surprised at a number of changes, and I think ultimately it could have cost Rangers dearly, actually. Again, I knew exactly how Morton were going to play it before a ball was kicked. keep it tight, not giving Rangers any chances, not making any mistakes, frustrate Rangers, and then try and grab a goal. And for a long period, that's exactly what it looked like, as if it was going to be turning out. And I thought the Rangers players, given the fact some of them, they couldn't have known they were or fancied themselves to be in the starting 11 on the Friday afternoon, let alone any other time. I think they responded well and got Rangers back into the game and ultimately won the tie to put Rangers into the next round. So I think, whilst I might have been happier with more of a kind of recognised starting 11, I don't think anybody that actually played did themselves any harm, either in confirming that they're decent backup players or that they could actually do a job for Rangers in the cup ties this season. And of course, without going overboard, I think the result this afternoon has probably upped the expectation level on what Rangers or Rangers fans will be expecting from their team now.
Rob, Stuart's mentioned there about kind of some of the difficulties that we faced against Morton. For me, it was a largely uninspiring performance despite the 2-1 victory. Is it still a concern for you that we don't seem to be finding our fluency as a team?
I think so. I think we'd like to see. We're seeing good passages of play in the game, but ultimately they are few and far between, unfortunately. And you'd think that as the season progresses, the more games that the team's playing together, that they'd be able to combine and put that together over larger periods of the game. I think one of the big things that the changes highlighted to me was that there are certain players who I think fans have been clamouring to be left out of the team. We saw what happens when some of them don't play, and I'll pick Tav as a prime example. Sterling looks a very capable player, but you can see that attacking on that right hand side isn't natural for him. So when we were trying to push the ball down that right hand side, there was too many times where crosses were really overhit to the back post and he really didn't find his man. And I think you're right, for large parts of that game we were disjointed. We made subs change shape a little bit. Things started to get a bit better, and we did create a number of chances towards the end of it. I think the stats were something like 20 chances created, 10 shots on goal. We've got to be finishing them when we create them in the big games. Against the likes of PSV and Celtic, as we'll touch on a wee bit later. You're maybe only going to get 1 or 2 chances a game, and you've really got to finish them off when they come along. And I think that's the worrying thing for most people at the moment, is that chances are being created. They're not being. It seems to be kind of right at the start of the game or right at the end, and for large periods of the middle part of play, we're too slow. And it's been very, very similar over the past kind of 2 or 3 years. We play better when it's fast paced football. We're moving teams out of position, and I think it will take time. We've seen it in bits, but you're right. Is the more games we play and we're still talking about the same things, then the more concerning it is getting a little bit.
I think there's a hesitancy with the fullbacks, because I think they were actually getting themselves into positions where you expect them to create more and actually press forward more. So they almost got themselves far enough forward to make it look as if they were interested, and then suddenly stalled and just didn't go any further. And I think that bit of it would be, let's be honest, Rangers have developed a style over a number of years where the fullbacks are key to the team getting forward. And I think the guys that played yesterday might not have embedded themselves in when it comes to that kind of way of thinking just yet. I think 2 things. One, I think they were looking for a decent performance to justify their selection and not do anything that would be deemed a mistake, or not do anything that would have been, costly to the team. Hence the reason why I thought, whilst they were getting maybe going forward, it was almost as if they didn't really want to be there. It was almost as if somebody was just yanking a rope and stopping them before they could actually do anything creative. I thought the midfield, just to pick up on Brian's point, I thought the midfield was sadly lacking in any kind of real creativity. I thought they were almost going through the motions. And I know it's difficult to hit the ground running from day one. And when you make that number of changes, it makes it doubly difficult. But I just thought it was almost like, let's just grind down the opposition and eventually we'll get ourselves through. Whereas Morton didn't quite read that script and made it tough for Rangers.
Yeah. Stuart, Rob mentioned that the changes in the subs seem to improve things. Is that still a problem, you think, that Michael O'Beale needs to fix, in terms of this team seems to need either a setback or changes to really find its rhythm? For me, I felt like we only really started to find our rhythm after Morton scored, and we'll come on to the goals a bit later, but for me that's still a problem, that the team seems to need some sort of setback or a change in shape or system or personnel to find its rhythm within a game.
I think it's quite scary, actually, that the point you make is a valid one, and I think I've been saying this for a considerable length of time as well, that it's almost like Rangers need something to spur them on, whether it's going a goal behind or a decision going against them or the likes. It looks as if they then need something just to give them a bit of a kickstart. And, you know, that shouldn't be the way of it. They should be on it from the off. And equally, when Rangers have gone in front in matches over a period of time, they almost switch off. You never really see them kicking on and suddenly going 2, 3, 4 up in quick succession. It's like they get a goal and it's like, right, we're ahead now. Let's see what the opposition have got, and maybe we'll hit them in a sort of counter attack or hit them with a counter punch. And I can see why a good number of Rangers fans are frustrated by that. They almost need an excuse to actually play the way that a great many people obviously think they can play. I think if you look at the comments from Dougie Emery, I mean, you know, he obviously set his side up in a certain way, but reading between the lines, he knew where the deficiencies and weaknesses were on the Rangers side and tried to exploit them, and almost did. And I think from that perspective, it's one where Rangers will be grateful that they actually get through the tie. And again, it's not papering over cracks or suddenly sticking, icing on a cake or putting sprinkles on it. I think today's result at Rugby Park suddenly made the Rangers result yesterday a bit more palatable, the performance a bit more palatable than it would have been had suddenly you've been debating the fact that Rangers only beat Morton 2-1 and were in the draw alongside the previous holders.
Yeah, Rob, there was a fair bit of VAR controversy in the game. 2 penalties awarded, one for each side, for kind of fouls inside the box that the referee didn't spot but VAR picked up on. Did you think both were correct decisions?
I'll cover that in a wee second. I think just to comment, I think the referee was fairly poor yesterday as well, out with having to go to VAR. I mean, we're talking there about chances. I felt that Dessers first should have stood. It was a very, very soft free kick. That potentially changes the course of the game. I think what Scottish referees seem to be doing and is using VAR as a bit of a crutch. They don't really want to give any decisions now, especially when it comes to that penalty box area, because they know they've got somebody else that's checking it. I think the Dessers one, you could say that he's kind of slightly caught Broadfoot. Broadfoot's kind of thrown himself to the ground. Again, that's in the soft category. I even think the penalty for Balogun's shot pull was soft. We've seen worse shot pulls than that in our game in this season, and VAR hasn't looked at it. So I think technically in the rule books you could say both were penalties, but it's the consistency on how we apply those rules that is the key point, and I don't think we've got that yet. I think the other thing with VAR is that the whole communication of it needs to be a bit more open. I mean, God knows why football hasn't followed the kind of video referee system in rugby. When you can hear the discussion between the referee and the video assistant referee to understand the decision-making process, what they're being asked to look at, and how they're coming to that decision. I mean, that would make it a hell of a lot easier for punters to be able to understand what's going on and why those decisions are being made.
Yeah.
Just on that point, I was watching the game at home. I didn't make it to Ibrox on Saturday, but I was watching the game on TV, and for the Balogun penalty, I had no idea what was going on because there was subs about to be being made, and they stopped the subs being made for VAR reviewing it. But even on telly, you didn't know what was happening or what was being reviewed, and they replayed it 3 or 4 times on the TV to try and if they could spot anything. And kind of did see the shot pull, but it was one of those. There's probably 5 of them in every game.
Well, just to pick up on what Robert was saying there about the rugby and what you hear in rugby, you have to accept the fact that in rugby you actually have people who know what they're doing, and you have a referee who is the arbiter, and all he's looking for is assistance on certain things. Whereas I think you're absolutely right, Robert, in saying that there's too many referees now using VAR as a crutch, or I would say as a safety net to pull them out of a situation where they might have got it totally wrong. The biggest thing that disappointed me about the referee, one, he looked as if it was like, I've got a big chance here on a big stage and I want everybody watching me, instead of doing the best thing that a referee can do, and that is basically to disappear into the background and referee the game without anybody seeing them. But the biggest disappointment was when I saw David Dickinson was the referee, and a guy turned up who didn't look as if he'd drank 3 gallons of Cuprinol and was a different colour to everybody else, and also didn't run around waving a big wedge of cash saying, I'll buy it, go to auction. So that was the biggest disappointment for me.
Rob, despite the kind of lacklustre performance, I thought there was some positive individual performances to take out of the game. The first one I wanted to call out was young John Leafreco. His competitive debut, and for me, he looks solid at left back. It's probably not his natural position, but I thought he did a decent job, and he made a kind of goal-saving tackle right at the end with a couple of minutes to go. Do you think he's somebody that we could see more of as the season progresses, particularly in the cups?
I'd like to think so. The thing that I loved about his performance was the first few minutes where he's went over left-hand side, cleaned the ball and absolutely smashed the Morton player as well and left them in a heap. At that age to do that and kind of put a marker down was really impressive to see. I think he obviously reminds me a lot of Bassey from the imposing figure that he is for such a young age. There's no doubt that he's still got some rough edges. He played pretty well in some of the pre-season games that I'd seen. And I think it's one of those ones that absolutely, minutes in cup games and bleeding him into the team to see how he develops is absolutely the way to go. I think he's just not quite there from a maturity point of view yet. Because that goal line challenge, if he was in a better position, he probably wouldn't have needed to make the challenge the way that he did. So there's pros and cons of his performances, but he didn't really put a foot wrong, and felt he had a fairly decent game for his first start in the team.
Yeah, I thought he did a good job for his first start playing out of position. I thought he kind of acquitted himself well. Stuart, one of the other players that kind of showed up well, but he's a bit of a divisive figure, is Ravi Matondo. Now, there's been a lot said and written about Matondo since he arrived. He's not, started the way anyone would have wanted him to. But it seems like he's here for the foreseeable future. There's been a lot of talk around him possibly leaving this summer, but it doesn't look like there's a transfer in the offing as far as we can see. Is this a case of we just need to get something out of him? We paid big money for him. We believe he's on, good wages. So we kind of need to try and get something out of him. And he showed in flashes for me on Saturday that he can contribute. And he also showed against Livingston the other week that he's capable of making an impact off the bench. Yeah,
without sounding like a broken record, I think that first and foremost, you've got to understand this guy plays wide. He's a winger, and therefore wingers, how can I put it, fluctuate. Whether the conditions are right for them, whether they fancy the opposition, whether they get out of bed on the right side. You look at Ryan Kent, and Ryan Kent didn't always produce, and certainly didn't produce the way that many thought he should. And that is it. That applies to every winger, and I mean every winger down through the history, not only of Rangers but of football as well. That's why you don't get very, very few wingers, other than say maybe John Barnes with 8 odd caps, being regulars at international level, because their careers go up and down. They fluctuate. Some days they're on a performance, some days they look like world beaters, other days they don't. I think Matondo is somebody that has been given a chance and they'll continue to give him a chance, simply because of two things. One, you would want somebody to do well if you spent a lot of money on him. And secondly, you would want him to do well simply because you've spent that money on him. You want him to justify it. It's, I would say a catch sort of 22 situation, but you really want to give somebody the opportunity to say, see, we told you this guy had something. And I don't really think he's hit those kind of levels either in individual performances or in terms of consistency. So I think there's still a lot asking for him. There's no doubt that, against, if you like, lesser opposition, he has the capacity to look decent at times. I think what you're really looking for is, say the opportunity was against PSV or against Celtic or a big cup semi, or a final, and he gets the opportunity and he goes and rips a team asunder. I think that is when you can actually say, aye, this guy's got it. But up until then, he's a bit of a bit part player, and his performances, haven't done anything to make you consider that he's anything else other than that.
Yeah, I think sorry, Brian, I was just going to say, I think the weekend, that'll probably give him a bit more confidence. I thought he had his opposition number, certainly for speed. There was a few times where he absolutely bumped him for pace on the left-hand side and put a couple of cracking balls across. It was just unfortunate there was nobody in the box for us to actually finish them off. But yeah, like Stuart says, I've not seen anything that shows that he's going to be a big game player for us. A good option coming off the bench when a team is tired and you can stretch him with his speed, like we've seen at Livy, absolutely. But yeah, I think there's still work to do, and it's whether Beale and his coaching staff can refine him a little bit more.
But the other thing on that, Robert, is that he is quick, but I think the disparity between how quick he is and how quick the rest of the team are, it basically looks as if there's an absolute gulf. I think other than the fullbacks, regardless of who plays, I think Rangers are actually a pretty slow and ponderous team. Matondo gives you the option of actually getting somebody that will bomb forward, but then when he does get in a position where he's bombed forward, it's like he stops to wait and people catching up to see what he's going to do next, and you kind of lose the edge of having somebody of that kind of speed in the side, because you don't know when he's going to go and going to take the ball further than he normally does, and hence the reason why guys hold back or just simply don't commit to that kind of level of attack.
Yeah, I still think there's a player in there, and I'm not writing him off just yet. And I'm hoping the last kind of two domestic games have given him a bit of confidence, and hopefully he can kick on and make a real impact. I still think there's more to come from Robbie Matondo. One of the other players that I thought did pretty well, I thought it was his best all-round performance so far, was Cyril Dessers. He got his goal from the penalty spot. I've got to be honest, I was a bit worried when he stepped up to do that penalty. I think we're just so used to seeing Tav on penalties. I was a bit worried. But for me, I thought it was his best all-round performance. Rob, I don't know how you felt. Do you think we're starting to see him now get up to speed, and hopefully he can kick on now?
I think so. I have to say, I felt really sorry, for him reading some of the comments on Twitter and stuff. I about his performances at the moment. The one thing that he's been doing in the games that he's played in is he's getting himself into the right position time and time again. And that for me demonstrates a good natural instinct for a striker. I think yesterday, you're right, was one of the better performances he's had in a Rangers jersey. And I think it was more because he was involved in a bit more of the build-up play. There was a great move where I think he'd made a mistake, won the ball back, played it to Lammers, back off him, set Matondo free. But then his work rate to get the ball back to win it high up the pitch and then feed Danilo for his goal demonstrates that I think that he is starting to get the fitness that he needs. He's starting to get up to speed with his teammates, and he was really unlucky in the first half as well. As I say, that goal being chopped off, but also the one where Sterling's cross got deflected high up in the air, the touch, control and turn to volley, and it was a good save by the Morton goalkeeper. I think showcases that there's something there, and it's just going to be a matter of time. At least he's got 2 goals now. Four starts. Hopefully he can score against PSV during the week, because he's got a semi decent record against them from his time in Holland.
And there was also a bit more physicality about him. I thought once or twice he took a dig and gave it back, which was not something that's become sort of commonplace. A number of guys playing in attack for Rangers where you've seen them suddenly disappear if they've taken a bit of a scalp. I don't think he was for taking a backward step either in this game or in terms of the performances that he's put in. So that was something that would endear himself to the Rangers support as well.
Yeah, absolutely. There was an incident actually with one of the Morton defenders where there was a bit of afters between him and Dessers. And it was good to see Dessers just stand up to him, because that's the one criticism I think I've had of him so far has been, he has seemed to be a little bit weak when it's come to that hold-up play. We're used to seeing somebody as a target man kind of getting the ball pinged into him and be able to hold off and win balls in the air, and we haven't really seen that much from him yet. But it's good to see him starting to kind of roll the sleeves up and doing the dirty stuff.
Another thing I would say is that he's played with one bunch of players, and therefore the channels that the ball might arrive at or arrive through would be different again yesterday. I did wonder somehow whether the players that he was playing with yesterday and the changes that had been made actually suited him better than actually the way that Rangers have wanted to play with the, if you like, Michael Beale's first 11, whether it was a slightly different way of the ball arriving at him that he hadn't quite experienced, and yesterday it suited him more. So only time will tell on that front. It's still really early days, but reiterating what Robert had said, I think the signs were there that he could come on again. But then again, I think I said that 35 years ago with Colin West.
I thought he certainly looked sharper, so hopefully it's promising signs now. Another player that I thought showed glimpses of what he can do when he came on, Stewart, was Yanis Hadji. Now, he kind of made no secret of his desire in the post-match press conference to play, which you would expect, but he kind of made a point of saying that, he respects the manager's decision, but he doesn't necessarily agree with it. And I thought he did well when he came on. He seems to have changed physically since the injury. He seems to be a lot kind of more physical now. It seems to be a lot stronger in terms of upper body strength. And I think the deeper role that he's sort of playing now suits him a bit better. But do you think there's now an opportunity for him to force his way into the team? And do you think that kind of deeper midfield role suits him a bit better?
Well, there's not a lot that he could actually have done. If you're injured in the type of injury that he had, there's not really much you can do other than doing a bit of weights to better your upper body strength, and maybe that's why he looks as if he's bulked out a bit. I don't think his game has has dropped off because of it. I think it might assist him, but you're right. I think the last thing that any Rangers fans, not just Rangers fans, I think the last thing that Michael Beale wants or needs is a guy who is chirping in the background saying, I'm available, I'm ready, I could do a job for you, I've done it before, I just want my place back. And it might be, ultimately that it's going to take a level of performance from him, or a number of performances from maybe turn Michael Beale's head and, get another look in from the manager. Until that happens, I think he is a guy who's now on the kind of fringes and peripheries of the Rangers team. And I feel sorry for the guy, because I've always thought he was a bit of a player, but it's happened to a great many players before, that they've had an injury that's kind of had their career hitting the buffers ever so slightly, and they've had to come back and fight doubly hard to get re-establish themselves. So he's no different in that count. I don't think he's the kind of player where he could be missing for 6 months, 9 months, a year, and immediately, as soon as he shows sign of life or breathing again, he's immediately launched back into a starting position. I don't think that's going to come. I think he was used sparingly at times when he was fit. So I don't see why or how it's possible for him to start jumping the queue now he's back, especially with the performance levels that one or two of the other guys are putting in just now.
Yeah, I liked his comments in the press conference, to be honest, because it shows a desire that he wants to get back into that team. And for the starting squad who've got the jersey just now, that's going to keep them on their toes. They know that they've got players behind them pushing them, that if they make any mistake, or if their performances are below par, there's 3 or 4 players who want that jersey off them. So I think from that point of view, it was great to hear that his desire is there to get back into that starting 11, and it's up to him to then showcase, like you said, Stuart, around the opportunities that he gets in the team and the chances that he can show those glimpses in training. I think it was probably a bit of a surprise that he didn't start the game to give him minutes. And I turned to the guys that I sit with to say, well, if he can't start against Morton, you've got to fancy that he might be one of the ones that Beale's potentially looking to offload. But when he came on, I thought he actually played well. He had a brilliant chance that forced a magnificent save for the Morton keeper, and then a few minutes later he was inches away from curling a cracker into the top corner. And that shoot on sight that Hadji's got demonstrates that I think he's still got ability that can add to the team. And being brutally honest, he did a lot more than Lammers did when he was on the pitch. And that was a disappointment, because, looking at his stats, I wasn't enamoured by the Lammers signing. Pre-season performances got me out of thinking, but the last couple of games he's been a little bit disappointing. So it may well be that he is going to get a chance to go into that role, but as we look forward to the PSV game, I think it'll be a slightly different team, and he'll probably need to wait for a league game to get his chance in that position.
Yeah, I think you might be right on that one. Stuart, we've mentioned a bit about the kind of result at Rugby Park. I don't want to spend too long speaking about the other side of the city, more to focus on what it means for us. There's obviously, this will just add extra expectation now for Rangers in terms of, bookies will have us nailed on favourites in terms of winning the trophy. A trophy that's kind of historically we've done well, and it's kind of in years gone by was always known as the Rangers Cup. Do you think there's a slight kind of concern there in terms of that extra pressure, and just maybe the players not getting a bit carried away with that, and just kind of knowing that there's still a job to be done here, even with their kind of main rivals out of the competition?
I've never quite bought into the mindset that being the favourites has added pressure. I think the real pressure would be if you had Hibs, Hearts, Aberdeen, Clydebank, you name it, Bonaccord, any other team you want ever had an existence in Scottish football. If you found them ahead of you in the bookmakers' odds, you're there for a reason, because one, people are putting money on you. It's not the bookmakers set odds and people bet on it. Your odds are are changed because the amount of money that people put on it. And if you suddenly end up as being favourites for a competition, that's because people have also fancied you. But I think Rangers would be under more pressure if they were like fourth or fifth favourites. And then there'd be a lot of people basically writing them off before they even got on the pitch. Listen, the other night there, speaking to Alec, the two of us said the same thing, and just, to repeat again what you said there, Brian, this was almost seen as a trophy or Rangers trophy. They won it year on year for a great many years, or were in the final for a great many years. If Rangers weren't actually winning it or in the final, then there's a bit of a Stewart's inquiry, because you wonder what had gone on. But I think it's about time that in terms of the cup competitions as well, Rangers have to start producing performances that make it look as if they actually want to win things. I've seen one or two people saying, well, maybe if Rangers lose to PSV, then that'll get them into the Europa League, and maybe that's our level. No, you want to play at the highest level possible. And it's the exact same thing applies with the expectation of Rangers now being favourites for the League Cup. You want that. You want that to be the case, because it means that people actually, appreciate or see some potential in how you're actually playing the game. So, no, I don't see any added pressure. If there is added pressure, I think maybe one or two of the guys at Ibrox currently pulling on first team shirts shouldn't be there.
Yeah, I've got to agree with that now. Thankfully, after we struggled a bit against Morton, next up it's only PSV on Tuesday night. Rob, by all accounts, they seem to be a much improved team compared to last year when we beat them again at this same stage. Just how big an improvement are we going to need if we want to take a positive result over Eindhoven next week?
So I did a doogie, and I did a little bit of comparison as to the results last year when we faced them, and this year. I think one of the biggest differences has been they've only spent kind of over 35 million euros in the transfer market so far. So, not a small amount of money. They've won the Johan Cruyff Shield again with a 1-0 victory over Feyenoord. They beat Sturm Graz 7-2 in aggregate, and they've won both the opening league games. Very, very similar to what happened last year. I think we weren't in a particularly good run of form either last year, but the team turned up when it mattered in this game. And like Stuart said there about pressure for being favourites in a cup where that should be an expectation that we win that as a competition, we shouldn't go into the PSV game with fear. This is where we're going to really see what these new players are made of. And ultimately this is the pressure games that they've signed for Rangers to play in. If they can't handle games like this against the likes of PSV and they go into their shell and they hide, that's when the fans will come for them. I think as long as we see whatever team Michael Beale selecting, rolling up their sleeves, doing the dirty stuff, throwing their bodies on the line, given that type of performance to do everything that they can to make the next round, that's what we want as fans. We want to see them giving it their all. If we don't play well and we go through, I'll be happy with that, because the results at the moment are probably more important than the performances. So if we can grind it out and get through and make it to that Champions League, the financial rewards are there for us.
Sure, it seems fairly obvious to say that PSV's going to be our toughest challenge of the season so far. And with that in mind, how do you think that the manager's going to set up in terms of personnel and tactics? Do you think he'll make any changes, or maybe try and go a bit more defensive than we've seen? Or how do you think he'll kind of play this one?
I think if you set your team up, there are very few managers in Rangers history who have been able to set a team up where they have gone in defensively and been able to produce results. I think, the late great Walter Smith was a past master when that, sort of came around. Pragmatism with a capital P was his middle name. And again, you've got a Fiorentina manager saying that Rangers played non-football. I think that's one of the greatest compliments anybody can ever give you, because Rangers played a two-leg tie against Fiorentina and came out as winners. This is cup football. It does not matter a damn what your performances are like, as long as you come out with a result. There is nobody sitting in the touchline with boards holding them up saying you get 5.9 for artistic impression. And there is nothing like that when it comes to cup football. The only thing that matters, and if you want to do a quick rewind and sort of give it a sort of QED moment, is look at Rugby Park this afternoon. It doesn't matter the performance or whatever you put in, as long as you win the cup tie. And that's all that matters over the next 180 minutes or longer, if it takes that for Rangers to get through this tie, is to come out the other end with a victory. The prize at the end of this is absolutely huge. Absolutely huge. And I think, I don't think that can be lost on any of the players. Certainly, it can't be lost on the management. The difference it would be from earning getting a win last week and boosting the coffers by approximately £5 million, and now boosting them by 25 or 30 million quid. I don't think that's lost on anybody. So again, how does Michael Beale set up? I think if you set up not to lose, you eventually lose. It's always been, no matter the level of football, I think you play to your strengths. You look at how you can most affect the game, how you can most afflict the opposition, and you go for it. There is no point in saying, we looked solid at the back and wasn't Butling great with another couple of saves and all the rest of it. No, you want to be basically looking at the stats that said Rangers had 60% of the possession and had 6 shots on target, 2 of them were in the net, and they had another 12 shots there or thereabouts. That's the kind of stats you want, not how much possession that you have in terms of just holding on to the ball and not doing anything with it. So I think, it could go for broke and get ripped asunder, but I think you've actually got to go and try and win the game and play to the strength that you believe you've got, because you were the one that signed the players.
Yeah, and I think if you look at how we set up in Servette, I think he probably got that wrong in the first half. But you had players like Raskin who really stepped up to the mark, and I think you could be a little bit more solid in that midfield area with Raskin, Jack, and Cifuentes, which then frees up Cantwell to go into the 10 position where he was so effective last year. So I think we might see some changes like that, but I would anticipate he's going to stick with the tried and tested system that he's been using so far. It's going to be up to the players to make sure that they're up for it from the get-go and that they're switched on. And I think that's the bit that we really need to focus on. It's making sure that the defensive unit is solid. Midfield are covering them, but when we get those opportunities, we need them to hit the back of the net, because we're not going to get 20 chances against the likes of PSV. It might be 2 or 3. Or as Stuart says, it might be 6, 7, 8. But when we do get those bloody chances, the ball's got to hit the back of the net.
Mm-hmm. Do you think we might see a back three, Rob? I mean, he's kind of toyed with it in games previously in terms of in late stages of the game. It's one of the things I thought he might go with in this game, is possibly trying a back three. Do you think he might spring that as a surprise?
Oh, that's a good one. I don't know is the honest answer. I think that might end up being something that he tries in the second leg, depending on how we play, because it gives him a bit of a different shape. It could be, but again, it's what do you sacrifice going forward with that? Who do you leave out the team to stick another defender in? Because ultimately, Jack has played well since the start of the season. He's done a really good job when he's come into the games and covering and being that kind of anchor in midfield and allowing players like Cantwell, Cifuentes, Raskin to go and affect the games in the forward areas. Do you substitute one of the strikers and play one up front to move to that 5? So I think, given we're still trying to get used to the team playing together the way they are in the formation that they are, I think that would be a massive risk to make that change. But sometimes in life, the biggest risk are the things that pay off. So I think trying to second guess what Beale's got in his mind and what he's going to do is probably a little bit too difficult just now.
I don't think you can switch from a back 4 to a back 3 or a back 5 that easily. I think any team that does that have one, very talented individuals, but secondly, they are disciplined and coached to the nth degree. They really are. It's not something you just decide, right, this is what we're going to do and this is how we'll do it. I mean, going back again to Walter Smith's time, he played 4-4-2, 4-3-3, and then he suddenly decided, no, I'm going to play what effectively was a 5-3-1-1 formation, where he had Cleland and the likes of Davy Robertson on either flank, which gave you the width and gave you a stack of pace, and played with 3 out-and-out centre backs. But he could do that then, because you'd ball winners in the middle of the park like Ian Ferguson and Stuart McCall. You'd match winners with the likes of Gascoigne and especially Laudrup and whoever you wanted to play up front to score the goals. But if you look at the quality of those guys in that team, that is nothing. They're light years ahead of anything that's at Ibrox currently. And again, this switching and trying this and trying that, personally, I think it'd be an act of folly, because I don't think they're that well versed in the sort of approach with 3 at the back, or as would be in Rangers' case, probably 5 at the back. I don't think it's as easy to make that change or that switch. So you might as well go with what you're used to.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Hopefully, whatever system and personnel he chooses, we get a positive result on Tuesday to take over to Eindhoven next week. Right, guys, I think we'll call it time there. All that's left for me to do is thank my guests. Rob, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It was great to talk to you both.
Stuart, thanks as always.
Thank you. Nice to see you. You've done something we're here this week.
Thank you. As well as being live, the show will be available on all your usual podcasting platforms: iTunes, Spotify, Acast, Stitcher. And we'd ask that you leave us a rating on your preferred podcasting app. The pod will be back on Friday evening to look back on the first leg against PSV and look ahead to our trip to Dingwall next weekend. Until next time, bye for now.